Mr. John Rowe was born in Philadelphia on December 9th, 1924. He grew up in Philadelphia during the Great Depression.
Well, I grew up during the Depression, so money was very scarce, and we made do with whatever we had. Uh, like clothing, you never got new clothing or new shoes. You just had to do with what you had. If your shoes wore out, you put cardboard inside the shoe to keep its feet off of the ground.
He had 5 siblings, 2 sisters, and 3 brothers. He was the second oldest in his family behind his older sister. His father served in World War I. Mr. Rowe turned 18 in 1943. Being 18 years old made him eligible to be drafted into the military. That year, on the same day that he graduated, he was drafted into the Army. He was sent to Fort McClellan for 13 weeks of basic training.
Mr. Rowe describes his departure as very sad. His parents watched him get on a train and leave for Alabama. Mr. Rowe says that the toughest part of basic training was the heat. It was July in Alabama and training in the heat was tough. After 13 weeks, Mr. Rowe went to New York where he expected to attend City College of New York for a couple of years and leave as an officer. However, the program was disbanded after a couple of months. That was when he was sent to Mississippi to become part of the 87th Infantry Division. He became a mortarman. A mortarman was a man who was in charge of a mortar. A mortar is a tube-shaped weapon that shoots explosives. He had to carry around the mortar, which weighed 40 pounds, all through Europe.
He was sent to Europe on the Queen Elizabeth, which was the largest ship in the world at the time.
Now that ship, because of its speed, went alone. It wasn't in a convoy like most ships across the ocean. Because it was so fast, and they zigzagged all the way across, so to avoid any German submarines that might be waiting to blow them up. There were 15,000 of us on that ship, and if that ship had gone down, that would have been a catastrophe.
The ship arrived in Greenock, Scotland, where the troops continued training. Then he was sent to Congleton by train. Next, just before Thanksgiving, he was shipped out to Le Havre, France. On the first day of combat, his 87th Infantry Division went on the front line, relieving the 26th Yankee Division. That was when they were pinned down by artillery fire. Many men were lost during this incident. The division of around 200 people decreased to about 100 people within a week. On December 16, 1944, the Germans started an attack known as the Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the Bulge was started after Hitler's army attacked through the Ardennes and Antwerp. Before this, American troops had thought that the war would be over by Christmas. Americans were caught off guard and struggled to hold Hitler back. Rowe's 87th Infantry Division was assigned to fight in the battle. They served under General George Patton as a part of his 3rd Army. Rowe was the first gunner during the battle. The conflict took place during one of the coldest, snowiest winters in European history. The troops slept outdoors in foxholes. This battle ended in around 75,000 American casualties. Mr. Rowe witnessed many deaths on the battlefield. By the end of the war, there were only 14 members of the 87th Infantry Division left. Mr. John Rowe was one of the 14 lucky survivors.
In February 1944, battalion headquarters called Rowe and about 15 other men to form a group known as Tiger Patrol. The Tiger Patrol was not a combat patrol, it was more of to determine where and how strong the enemy was. They were supposed to take prisoners back if they had the opportunity. John Rowe took the job because he thought it would be better than shooting on the front lines in harsh weather and sleeping in foxholes. When he was a mortarman, he was only given a .45 caliber revolver, and when he was in Tiger Patrol, he was assigned the top rifle available.
After World War II, Mr. John Rowe did not want to re-enlist and serve in the active duty. Instead, he decided to enlist for the reserves. He heard from his friend that if he were to join the active reserves, he'd get a day's pay for every time he went to a meeting. Nearing closer to the Korean War, Mr. Rowe's whole outfit was called up to be stationed in Reading, where the 318th Tank Battalion was headquartered. In October 1950, Mr. Rowe was then stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana, where he and his outfit would train for the Tank Battalion. Soon after his training had started, Mr. Rowe started to notice other men getting hardship discharges.
And I saw all these people getting hardship discharges. I said, boy, if they can get a hardship discharge, why can't I?
He then applied for one, and it came through in August of 1951. Mr. Rowe, finally out of the military, drove back home from Louisiana, and he was welcomed back with open arms by his family. By the time Mr. Rowe left the service, he was married and had his first daughter.
After leaving the service, Mr. John Rowe received several medals. One was the Good Conduct Medal. He received this medal for displaying good conduct and efficiency.
I was a good boy. I never went AWOL.
He also received the Bronze Star. The Bronze Star is awarded to a soldier for showing acts of heroism, meritorious achievement, and meritorious service in combat. Thank you, Mr. John Rowe, for serving in the military during World War II. You are very much appreciated.